Hello fellow audio nerds, I'm Steph, and this is Major Hi-Fi. So recently, a lot of you have been requesting a review of a DAP, a digital audio player, a music player. Something that's relatively affordable, but also sounds good. Well, I was super lucky enough to get my hands this week on the FiiO M7. This little player right here, it sounds really great, and it'll definitely play back all of your nerdy high-res files here. But the real question is, how does it perform? Let's go back in time, I'll show you my first impression, and then I'll meet you right back here for my overall thoughts. Alright, here we go. Hey everybody, welcome to my place. Today I've got with me the FiiO M7. So let's open it up here and see what's inside the box. I'll also mention if you've been watching some of these videos and you haven't subscribed yet, please feel free to do so. I post videos like this every week, so just want to make sure you're seeing them if you want to. Alright, so we've got not too much in here, not too many bells and whistles really, it's kind of bare bones. We've got some documentation, got a cable, this is the USB-C used for charging and for data transfer. This is really cool, like clear, just like case. And then the M7, let's see how it looks. Oh yeah, it's very classy. It's interesting too, like I'm looking at just sort of how it sits. This bar actually goes along the top. Usually you'd think that you'd use it like this, but it actually goes this way. As you'll see, the actual look of this thing is really quite simple. It's just sort of this aluminum, I think, housing, aluminum-ish sort of housing with just the black screen. Not really like, I don't know, a lot of other players have like kind of strange shapes. This is just rectangular. It feels really easy to hold in my hand. And yeah, it just kind of looks classy. There's not too much going on, so I'll just sort of quickly show you. Along the top here, there's the power button and the headphones / like line out. Along the side, you've got this volume wheel along with like the playback, skip ahead, go back, play, pause. Along the bottom, you've got the USB-C port, and then along the side, you've got the SD card slot. And yeah, I really like the size of this thing, because it definitely feels like really easy to hold. Sometimes like with smaller players, I have a hard time where it feels like I don't have a good grip on it, but I like the size of it, and then it's also like can fit in my pocket like pretty, it's like smaller than my phone. I think it's really good size, very portable, but also really classy looking. But yeah, for me with a player like this, this one goes for $199, and there are other players sort of in and around this sort of price range. So for me, the real question is like, how does the thing actually perform? Because and it definitely has to sound good. But a lot of them at this price range do sound good, so I'm really curious about sort of the GUI, as it were. Pressing and holding the power button to turn it on. Welcome. Okay, setting this up with the English language, because that's the language I speak, obviously. Just waiting for this to load up here. And alright, so now that it's all set up, this sort of opening screen is really kind of simple. It's got 6 options, including the FiiO music player, which is what I'm most interested in, but there's also an FM radio, there's file management, there is a gallery for all of the artwork, and then there's technical support and settings. I'm going to dive right into the music player to see how that's looking. I've used the FiiO X3, 5, and 7, and the latest iterations of those. And I always sort of found that the user interface was a little bit clunky. I'm curious how this one will be. It looks different for sure already. So this is sort of the home screen. If I go to artist, all my artists are here. It's all sort of, you just have to like super easy to like scan in your music from the SD card, which is how I'm doing this now. I did read a little bit in the manual prior to using this, so there are a couple controls that make things super easy, like if you swipe up from the bottom on the, the left side, it will go back to the previous page, and if you do the same thing on the right side, it will go back to the home screen, because there are no buttons here, as you can see, you know, like your phone might have. So for example, say I'm an artist, but I want to go back because there's a specific song I want to hear. I could just swipe up over here, brings me back a page. But actually, I kind of, you know, I'm going to all songs. I'm going to search for Buffalo Soldier, Bob Marley. Okay, cool. There it is. Great. So this song is playing. I can go back to the home screen just by swiping up on the left. So pretty simple. And just poking around this thing for a few minutes, like, it seems really pretty, like, boiled down. It's really simple, kind of doesn't do anything like super crazy advanced, but also is really easy to use and kind of intuitive. I just made like a playlist for myself. You know, you can also search for individual songs, individual albums, artists, which I really like. I think that some of the other FiiO stuff before was a little bit clunkier, a little harder to navigate. Now, saying that, I'm only working here with about 120 songs, so if you have a very large library, I wonder how it would be for you. But I really like that you can just easily search for things. It kind of makes creating playlists and finding what I want to listen to just super easy. Before getting into the listening portion of this first impressions part of the review, I do just want to go over some of the pieces of technology that make this thing kind of special. And honestly, I just found this information by reading up on the FiiO website, but there were definitely a few things that I thought were noteworthy to mention here because, you know, if you're paying $199 for this thing, you want to make sure that it has sort of something special about it, not just that it could play music, because other players are cheaper and play music also. So actually, the first thing that I want to say that I wish this had, but it doesn't, is the ability to connect to Wi-Fi / be able to stream with it. I know a lot of you probably use streaming services like Spotify, Tidal, that sort of thing. And with this, you can't actually stream music. I know you can with the X7 from FiiO, but that's, you know, that player is like $700. It's definitely a step up, and I think a lot of the other players too that are a step up will have that functionality, but a lot of the players in this price range don't have that functionality yet. So just wanted to mention it here though, because that might be a deal breaker for some of you. That is not a deal breaker. Let me talk about some of the other kind of cool things. One thing with this is the battery life. FiiO did a number of things with the technology inside to actually make the battery life be like as best as it possibly could be, given the fact that this thing is like really kind of small. So first of all, if you were just playing music continuously, this thing would last for 20 hours. So most of especially the Bluetooth headphones that you might be using with this, if you'd like to, because it does have wireless capabilities, will actually die before this thing will die. If you're not listening to music, this has 40 days of standby time, which is remarkable. It's really, really special. This is because of the type of, there's a certain chip in here, which is I wrote it down because I'm not so good with like this part of things. But yeah, so this is the Samsung Exynos 7270 system on chip. Basically, this chip fits like more, it can do more things in a smaller space. So it's basically 14 nanometers versus what it was before, which was 28. So literally half the size that it would be. And because of that difference in size, FiiO says that this actually reduces the amount of power that it needs by 20%. And in addition to that, file storage, power management, memory, these are all fit and chips like together. So rather than having them separately, having them all together actually saves about 40% of the space. It makes it better for cooling because it's close together. You can sort of get more air flow going in here, but it also makes the battery life better. I do definitely want to mention the wireless capabilities of this because I think that might be how a lot of you might end up wanting to listen because it's super convenient, and also this player supports the highest quality wireless playback that you can do. So that includes aptX, that includes Sony's wireless listening system, which I'm really interested to see what happens with that. Will it become more widely sort of used? I'm not really sure, but right now it's my understanding it's one of the best sounding wireless codecs that exists. But in addition to that, it also will support PCM and DSD playback for all of you nerds who really want the DSD. I just did a listening test yesterday between PCM and DSD, and I heard a difference. And the further down this rabbit hole you go, you just keep finding more and more things down there. So the next thing I want to mention about this, and this is something that I love about all of FiiO's products, which is the low noise floor, and the reason, one of the ways that they can have such a low noise floor is from the type of DAC chip that they use. So they're using an ESS, let me look at this paper over here, the ESS Saber 9018Q2C chip. So if any of you know anything about that, I'd love to hear more about specifically about that. What FiiO says about it is that it basically has individual power supplies for the analog part of it and then the digital part of it. It's also connected to the headphone amp part, and that has its own set of dual power supplies. So basically, like, each kind of section has its own power supply, and this avoids noise getting into the signal. And that to me makes such a huge difference in sound. Just in my experience with both FiiO products and other products that are dedicated to that kind of sound reproduction. In addition to that too, there's also a low pass filter which is adjustable for the manufacturers. So I think that's another reason why they liked it, because they could actually tailor it a little bit to the sound that they wanted to put out there. I think that's really kind of cool, and it's good to know, just, I don't know, from an outsider's perspective of why a manufacturer chooses a certain chip over another, but it's sort of, them putting that information out there really sort of makes sense. It makes sense for why they would choose it for this M7. And lastly, just some information that's helpful to know. So this M7 has 2 gigabytes of internal storage, which really isn't that much, I mean, if you think about it. However, it does have the SD card slot, which is probably how most people will be listening to their high-res files, I would imagine, because they're larger files. And that can handle up to a 512 gigabyte micro SD card. So I think, those of you with really large collections, you'll still have, you'll have plenty of space with this thing, but it just won't live on the actual M7. It'll live on your micro SD card. All right, y'all. So for this listening portion of the first impressions part of this review, I've got with me my Focal Spirit Pros, which I will be listening. I'll be listening to these through the M7, and instead of going through my usual sort of thing where I look at the lows, the mids, the highs, the soundstage, so sort of like systematically like that, I think what I'm going to do for this review is just sort of tell you my thoughts as I hear them, because I think one reason I haven't done a review like this before is that it's hard to talk about. It's hard to describe such little changes that come from, different sort of players and how that affects the sound. So whatever, y'all get the point. Let's listen. This is really great. So yeah, I'm listening to Ed Sheeran's song called The City, and what I'm really noticing, first of all, is this sort of clarity in the mid-range. There's a lot of mid-range stuff going on here. You got Ed Sheeran's voice, obviously. You've got background vocals, guitars, this sort of like beatbox thing. and all of that sort of sits in the mid-range, but it all feels so separate from each other, in the sense that, you know, you could really hear the fine details of each thing without it stepping on anybody else, and that more so than I would get from sort of my phone. The transient response is more active and is more precise with each of those instruments as well. His voice also, like, there's so much detail there. I feel like I can hear more of his voice, if that makes sense. So I can hear these like breaths in between words more so than usual, more clearly for sure, and it just feels a little bit more like forward, if that makes sense. Forward, closer to me in the mix. In terms of the soundstage already, so I'm listening to Dear Prudence by the Beatles, and immediately, like, when the vocals came in, there's like almost a creepy amount of intimacy there, where I feel it higher, like more like sort of by my forehead, I guess, in terms of like the height part of the soundstage, and it also just feels very, very close. The dryness of it is like stands out a lot, and that's kind of cool. But the placement from left to right feels more exposed as well. But let me listen a bit more. Yeah, so I get the sense that this player's soundstage in general is more of like a revealing soundstage, as opposed to something that's really creating a soundstage. With Dear Prudence, that really feels like I can hear, you know, there's a very big contrast between where everything is sitting, both in the height and specifically in that song or other Beatles songs that are mixed in this way, the width, you know, with things panned out really, really far off to the side. And the thing that was most interesting to me in that mix was actually the drums, because you could clearly hear the room situation, the room microphones, if you will, in that mix, and I specifically hear it in the hi-hat. But when the drums are actually playing, you know, they still feel really detailed, and you know, the transient response there is really strong. It's really kind of feels like a sense of accurate, like just like a sense of clarity in general. It's kind of hard to describe, I guess, but I guess I would say that these drums would not have felt further back in space if that room mic wasn't there. Whereas something that created a soundstage, it might still feel back in space based on the frequency response of it or something. Wow, yeah. This is so awesome. Yeah, so I'm listening to a song by Daft Punk called Crescent Dolls, and that song is like, there's a lot of like rhythmic subdivision stuff happening, and this really keeps up with the transient response of that song, which is so active that it would be really easy for that to lose clarity if the player didn't support it, or if the headphones didn't support it. And as a result, for me, in particular with this song, but also kind of just generally, dynamic response really comes through for me as a stronger emotional impact. And with this song, once all the instruments are in, like I said, there's so many subdivisions and just like kind of craziness going on that how I feel it then is like a sense of chaos and a sense of fun, and it really comes through with that sort of feeling with this player. Alright, I'm going to keep listening to these over the course of the next week, see how it performs, see if any kind of weird bugginess happens, as well as try it with different kinds of headphones. You know, is this the right player for somebody who has a very expensive pair of headphones? Is this a good player for somebody who has a very kind of more like cheap set of headphones? Will it improve the sound any for you? So yeah, I'll keep listening, let you know what I think in the future. So here we go. Overall, the FiiO M7 paired with a high-resolution file like a FLAC file or a WAV file immediately creates a sense of three-dimensionality in the music that is not dependent on your headphones. Regardless of whatever headphones you have, it will improve that sort of feeling to them. And this sort of vividness really reveals itself to me a lot in the clarity and the separation in the mid-range. When I listen to the same song on both the M7 and my phone, for example, through Spotify, at the highest, the highest resolution that I could do on Spotify, I definitely still got much more clarity in the mid-range with the M7. And I also compared this to other players, to see sort of where it sat. And especially, for example, thinking to this in comparison with the FiiO X3 Mark II, this still had more clarity. So the technology inside is definitely doing something special. The DAC is really good too. The M7 can really portray a sense of vividness in the soundstage too, the sense of intimacy, the sense of depth, height, width, all sort of comes through with just overall more detail than if you were not using it. And especially with more budget kind of headphones, these distinctions make such a big difference, and it really makes me appreciate the M7 for being able to provide such an experience even with a less expensive pair of headphones. I mean, I was listening to these with my Beyerdynamic DT240s, and it even increased the experience listening to those. Likewise, it still made a really big difference too with more expensive headphones that, you could even hear even more of sort of these little nuances come through, especially in the soundstage. And this is a case with a lot of FiiO products, but especially now that we're talking about it right here, the M7 has a very low noise floor. And this really comes through with the sense of very active dynamics, more active than you'd definitely get before. And if you have a pair of headphones or earphones that can really present dynamics in an active way, you'll have so much fun with this. Because not only does it improve the emotional impact that the songs have with their dynamics, but it also just makes it so much more experiential. It makes listening so much more of an experience, if that makes sense. Having these sort of nuanced dynamics, and then the soundstage, and then just the mid-range being so clear. Overall, the FiiO M7 is a great option. It's a great bang for your buck sort of player, and if you're trying to make that transition from your phone to a dedicated player where you can put high-resolution files, this is a great option. It's super simple, and it sounds really good too. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I just wanted to give you a heads up that we're actually starting to put a discount code down in the description box down below. So if you are interested in getting something like this, you can get 10% off. So just go down there, you'll find the link, and you'll be good to go. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And for more videos like this, be sure to subscribe. All right, see you next time. Bye.